Whenever we make a transition to any new situation in our lives, we have the potential for transition shock. Sometimes that shock can be subtle, be the result of changing countries and cultures. We call that culture shock. And the shock, which is often not recognized but certainly felt, shows how culture is a very real thing with very real effects, many of them psychological. Guillermo Oberg gives us the U and W shape of culture shock and divides culture shock into different stages. The honeymoon stage is the initial stage of marveling at everything new in the second culture. That moves into a dive where the ease of communication and navigation become problematic and you arrive at a bottom where you become hostile and angry. You work through all of these emotions and problems with the help of others through humor and get to a stage at which you have adjusted and are generally successful. This diagram implies that it happens once. My experience is that it is a roller coaster whenever I stay longer in a country. I don't experience culture shock if I'm only gone for a month, but anything longer will find me getting frustrated with my lack of comfort, especially depending on my language ability, if that is a cultural difference as well. When one stays out of one's home country longer, there will be a return culture shock when re-entering one's first culture. This is often overlooked, but can be very impactful and stressful if not expected. When you return, you have changed, and it seems like no one back home has changed. You've lost certain relationship, gaining others in the second culture. You've adjusted your routines, and you like them. The new routines work for you. You eat new things that you like, but everyone expects you to get back home and get back into line. Your re-entry shock, also known as reverse culture shock, is complete when you come into classes with your parents and friends when they treat you the same as before or have expectations from before you left, those things that you've now shrugged off. There are other elements to culture shock, but most of them revolve around the adjustments that you have made or have to make to a second culture in a second cultural adjustment that you like, things you like, you adopt, and you want to continue to practice in your first culture. Berarder and Deerdorf give us the 5 R's of culture shock that I have compared to Weaver's explanation on this slide. Each R represents an adjustment we make or a coping mechanism. Our routines change and we have lost our familiar cues, such as our normal rhythms and time controls. There is a normal clash here unless you cross to a culture that is not dissimilar. But if you avoid a change to routines by going to Canada, for example, or Mexico in the same time zones, you will certainly have issues with both your internal reactions to the second culture as well as how others react to you and your own behaviors. You may be perceived as rude and see people get angry with you, or you perceive others as rude and get angry because your internal cues are at odds with those of your hosts. The familiar cues and behaviors are no longer a source of information, and your interpretations based on those are now out of whack. Your communication breaks down, including your body language and ability to express yourself in that, not to mention if you are speaking a foreign language to you. There is an identity crisis as you lose roles back home and gain roles in the host country, your second culture. Not only that, but what makes a good or bad performer of your old or new roles is culturally determined and may not correspond to what you know. What does a good student do in your first culture versus another second culture? While your relationships may be breaking down back home due to time zone conflicts, you are gaining new relationships. Some of them may be romantic and equally fraught with cultural difference. Trust me. Once again, communication breaks down and is frustrating, and you make an adjustment by understanding the W curve and understanding, hopefully ahead of time, that all of this is normal transition shock. And you might experience it in places you wouldn't expect, like when moving from Minnesota to Arizona. Crossing culture has real effects on the person crossing over. The psychological effects are perhaps the most real, as they are the feelings you may or may not be aware of. They result in something as simple as a general anger that you may be feeling, but don't know why, or they result in a total reordering of how you understand yourself in more extreme cases. A person, according to Weaver, who tends to be more strictly black and white or cut and dried, tends to have more difficulty crossing cultures. As one of those people, cut and dried, I'm not so sure that that is true. Everyone experiences the psychological effects, so be aware of the changes and be ready for them. The social effects are to your network of family and friends. You will lose some and gain others. This is a bittersweet element of crossing cultures, as the lifelong relationships you gain, at least in my experience, replace the lukewarm relationships they replaced. But I am limited in my network by choice. Extroverts may not see any loss here. Your ultimate adjustment determines a lot of your own ability to re-enter your first culture. How you've changed will be challenged, and you may become a chameleon, adapting to the environments you find yourself in more easily. But I would strongly assert that the greatest adjustment is the realization and understanding of the effects of culture in a deeper way. These set you on an experiential path to becoming more interculturally competent. And if you're anything like me, it becomes a reason that motivates you for the rest of your life. Intercultural competence is my drug of choice, and it's not illegal in any country that I know of. So while I use these videos as presentations for the courses I teach on intercultural competence, they are also freely available for anyone to watch. So please feel free to like it or subscribe to the channel as you see fit. Please share it. Your feedback is valuable to me to make sure that things are clear. And may you find the peace you're looking for.